What is roughing the passer?
I don't know.
It's such a question now after the play we saw on Tom Brady and then the play last night. What is roughing the passer? What can they do to review and correct? And that's all the talk today. And I go back to what they are doing in spring football leagues. We did it in the Alliance. You see it in the USFL with a sky judge type official that could correct some calls. So we called on a good friend, Daryl Moose Johnston, three-time Super Bowl champion with the Dallas Cowboys, analyst for Fox Sports, the executive vice president for football operations in the USFL. Daryl, I think the spring leagues have figured it out. Why hasn't the NFL?
I don't know. We had a great example of it last year in our divisional playoff game with New Jersey versus Philadelphia. We had a roughing the passer call on the Philadelphia Stars, where the pass was intercepted by Philadelphia, returned all the way inside the 15-yard line. So what was going to happen is, if that penalty stands the way it would in the NFL, it's going to be first down New Jersey at the 23, 24-yard line going in to score. If that penalty is picked up, it's going to be first down Philadelphia at the 12-yard line going in to score. So it was a huge moment in the game, in a playoff game, for the right to go to our championship in our first year in the league. And we had in place the ability for Mike Pereira to step in on that call and have that flag picked up. And we're watching it in Canton, and we're like fully confident that Mike is going to see this. And it, in real time, it looks like there is a potential for it to be a roughing the passer. But when you see the replays, it doesn't meet the standard of the rule. And Mike had the officials pick up the flag, and it became 1st and 10, Philadelphia at the 12-yard line, and Philadelphia went on to win that game. So everything that Atlanta was talking about, Grady Jarrett, the players on that defensive side of the ball, when you took the opportunity away from us to win that game, is something that we were able to prevent in the USFL. And I really wish the NFL would really take a hard, long look at this, because the one thing that they always say is we do not want the officials to become the deciding or determining factor at the end of a game. And that's exactly what happened in Atlanta. That's exactly what potentially could have happened with Kansas City last night. The Chris Jones play was very, very similar. A sack fumble from behind, which is unusual, right? Usually that penalty comes with the defender coming into the face of the quarterback. This is a situation where he's coming from behind the quarterback on a strip sack, lands on top of Derek Carr, but puts his left hand down to brace the impact and keep all his body weight from landing on the quarterback. So that one doesn't meet the standard of the rule. And I understand that there's a sensitivity right now because of what happened to Tua Tagovailoa in Miami. But still, every situation has to be officiated independently, and it has to meet the standard of the rule. And I don't think we saw that during the course of the weekend in those two circumstances. So the long answer to your question is, Jason, I have no idea what roughing the passer is anymore.
No, I don't think anybody does, Daryl. But I've got to ask you, and you know the NFL well. You know Jerry Jones well, one of the owners, obviously, in the NFL. What are the chances that they put something like this in sometime in the near future?
I hope they really take a look at what we did. We had a really good working relationship with the NFL. Obviously, special teams is still the area where we have some of the really big collisions, and they wanted to really take a look at our kickoff results with concussions. We did it a little bit differently, but it really, for all intents and purposes, becomes kind of a punt play at a certain point. We are allowing a little bit bigger of a collision, but not the big ones where you're coming from the back end. We don't have the double teams similar to the NFL. So there's some carryover from what we did in the USFL with what the NFL does on our kickoff return. But then there were some other things that they wanted to look at, because once you figure out the kickoff return, now you have to figure out the punt return, because that's going to take precedent. That's going to be the next most dangerous play in the NFL. And we did some things where we didn't want our gunners lined up on the out. We had them inside the outside edge of the numbers. Number one, probably more than anything, is pace of play. We don't want guys going out of bounds and having that penalty called. It doesn't take away a lot of time, but it's one of those penalties. It's kind of a nuisance in the game, and we were able to take that away. What we wanted to look at is the gunner getting funneled inside now, where there's a lot of traffic, and does that raise an injury risk? And I think all the data that we were able to provide for the NFL is no, it doesn't. So we're able to impact pace of play in the punt game, keep it a safer play, without anybody going inside, getting funneled inside, and maybe getting into where all the moving bodies are. And was there an uptick in potential player injuries? And that was not the case. So I think one of the great things, what we were able to do in the USFL last year was, kind of be a laboratory for the NFL on some of the things they want to look at. But let's take player safety. Now let's really start to take a look at some of the things that are really important. And there's nothing more important than the outcome of the game being determined by something outside the players on the field. And I really feel like the Atlanta Falcons, that's exactly what happened to them on Sunday afternoon.
The Moose, Daryl Johnston, joining us here on the Blitz, 3-time Super Bowl champion with the Cowboys. You see him on Fox, and obviously a executive vice president with the USFL. And, and I know what you guys did at the USFL level, and you took some from your experiences with the Alliance, and you made them better. You improved on them. The idea of having an official in the booth, and I kind of related to, you've got a doctor up there that can buzz down and say, we need to evaluate this player for a concussion based on looking at video. How much time, or what does the data say, if there was an official up there that could buzz down and say, I think you need to look at this one again, or you got that one wrong, you've got to reverse it? From your experiences, even in the booth with Fox, with the rules person right there, it just seems so wrong, Daryl, that everybody in the world feels like they got that call wrong, and the only guy that feels right is the guy standing out there that doesn't have the benefit of technology.
Yeah, it's a situation where, as you pointed out, everything is there in place to do it now. We just got to figure out a reason why are we not doing it right now. We've seen the video assist. I think that has helped in pace of play. There is conversation that's going on, and there is dialogue between people at the stadium, with the officials, with New York, and we're moving along. We're making progress in certain areas, but the big thing that we did was, the ability to take something back that's already been there. And that's where the NFL has to become comfortable. What Mike did in our North Division championship game in the playoffs was actually take something back that was put on by the officials during the game. That's the big leap. And so that's where everybody has to get comfortable. I think sometimes you go back and review and there's the ability to put things on, but there's not the ability to take things off. And I just think, to your point, the pace of play, we see how quickly the communications are positive. We hear people talk about it all the time, where, hey, the reason that happened so quickly was we had some video assist there. One of the things that we're doing well with. So they're making strides in certain areas. But I think that hopefully after last weekend, we need to take a little bit of a harder look at the impact that those two plays, had on the game. And for Atlanta, much more substantial than Kansas City. But that was a huge play at the time for Kansas City. So, who knows how that changes the complexion of the game moving forward after that play. So you can always say that, well, it didn't really have an impact on it because it went against Kansas City, but they ended up winning the game. But, well, no, that's not right. You don't know what happens, once you move forward off of that call. So, I think the big thing is we've proven through technology and dialogue that the ability is there. to make sure that there's nothing from an officiating standpoint that could impact the game from a negative standpoint. And we just have to have the courage to allow more opportunity for New York, for the video assist to step in and make sure that that play is done correctly. There's nothing worse. If we're going to talk about, the optics of, and this, if it's true that this is all based on Tua and what happened to him in Buffalo, and, we see, gross motor skills that aren't right, and everybody that's watching it on TV, everybody that's in the stadium is wondering why he's still allowed to play the game. If we're going to get that way from player safety, we should be able to get there from the rule standpoint too. We can't show something on television and on replay in the stadium where it's quite obvious that really doesn't meet the standard of the rule. And it's not right. And we should have the ability to go back and fix that. So hopefully this is one of those situations that the competition committee takes a look at, and we have a big discussion in the off season, and we start to work on a way to make sure that something like that doesn't happen again.
When you look at the remainder of the season, Daryl, and that's what, obviously none of this is going to change this season. If there are any changes made, I would assume it would be before next season. But if this is all about Tua, I feel badly for these officials, because Jerry Jones was on the radio in Dallas today, and he said that there was nothing mandated. But I have to believe that the NFL had to have said something. I mean, that the optics of Tua laying on the field were not good for anybody, and they don't want it to happen again. The officials just seem to be in a bad spot in my mind right now.
They are, because player safety always needs to be the number one concern. And it's tough for them to be able to be in that moment and respond to a situation, understanding what you just saw happen and transpire over the last 2 weeks, what you just saw happen on that play, and how do I make that work? And every situation is going to be independent. It all has to be viewed and evaluated by that event. And I think that when you watch the hit on Tom Brady by Grady Jarrett, I mean, everybody knew that didn't meet the standard of the rule. So was there an emphasis on this? The Chris Jones play, unique, coming from behind, kind of a different dynamic than most of the hits on quarterbacks that we see. Usually it's coming from the front. Where is the face mask? Where does the hit contact? Does he slide to the side of the body? There's a lot of things that go into it. And coming from the backside, how many times have we seen a roughing the passer happen coming from behind the quarterback? It's almost always coming from the front of the quarterback. So, it really does seem like there was an emphasis placed on kind of making sure that the quarterbacks are protected a little bit more. But we all know it's a violent game. It's a game of collisions, and we play it understanding that those are the risks. And what this game has become since I played it is it's so much safer. The equipment, the protocols in place. I mean, from the 90s to the 2020s, how much safer it is to be out on that field is unbelievable. And I praise the NFL for what they've accomplished over that. But you're walking that fine line now where are we impacting the result of a game because we had a very unusual situation happen that maybe is an outlier, and now we're overreacting, on each and every play, making sure, and is it an overreaction? So yeah, I agree. We put the officials in a tough spot, especially if internally there was an emphasis to keep an eye on this. And it really does appear after this weekend that that's exactly what happened.
Very true. And think about a fullback saying it's so much safer now.
Yeah.
And I think about the position you were playing and when you were playing, and it's nuts. And Daryl, you look at your position as a broadcaster, so you got to go to coaches meetings, meet with officials, players. And then, of course, as a league executive with the USFL, you're in those kind of meetings. And one of the things that I loved about the USFL broadcasts is when Mike Pereira was looking at a call, There was no real stoppage reviews here. It's just Mike Pereira's looking at a play, but he's talking to the official and talking the viewer through why he was making the call with what he was seeing. Why does the NFL not look at that kind of transparency? So even if all of us are complaining, from fans, media types, players, former players, at the very least, you could understand and hear the reasoning from the official and then decide whether you agree with them or not, but you understand why he made the call or what he was looking at.
Yeah, that's a great point. It eliminates a lot of the gray area. Even as a broadcaster, when we talk to our teams in our production meetings, a lot of the stuff we're trying to find out is the why. Some of the things that we're trying to enlighten the broadcast about and educate the viewer are about the why. And I think that's a great area that's pretty easy. You bring clarity to it. There's transparency to it, and you may not agree with it, but at least you heard the whole process, and you're like, wow, yeah, I could see that, but I still don't agree with it. This one, was kind of tough. Over the course of the weekend, we had a couple of tough ones, and you're not going to know that thought process. You're not going to know the reasoning to get to the why. So, I don't know. Maybe it's been 4 years since the Alliance. It's 2 years since the XFL and 1 year since the USFL. And in each one of those leagues has been transparent in their replay. And it's always been the same response. The fans really enjoy listening to the dialogue and how they get to that point of why they made that decision. So I don't know why. It would be, I'm sure the NFL has its reasons why they're not going to do it. I've never been a part of that conversation to hear exactly what the concerns are, but I think when we're doing it in New York, there's a lot of conversation that happens from the game site back to New York, up into certain areas inside that home stadium where the dialogue is going on. And I just think the NFL would benefit from the fact that they were being a little bit more transparent in what they were allowing the viewer to see.
Very good stuff. Daryl Johnston, the Moose, 3-time Super Bowl champion with the Cowboys. See him on Fox every Sunday. Got the promotion there, running the USFL. Appreciate you taking some time with us this afternoon to shed some education and inform us on, kind of some backstory with that. I love the insight.
Always good to talk to you, Jason. All right, Joe, take care.
Appreciate it. The Moose, Daryl Johnston, joining us here.